Welcome back to my Amiga 1200, looking rather sorry for itself, sitting on the bench here in pieces, but for good reason, and that's because I'm still screwing around with this, the terrible fire TF1230 accelerator that we built last time. In particular, I'm still playing with the IDE, just trying to get everything set up the way I want it, but to get the machine to boot to that, to boot to the TF1230's IDE, we first of all need to run that disk, which has the device driver on it. That loads it into memory, just like that. We can eject the disk, reset, and then the machine should boot to this IDE. And there it goes. Now, the only thing about that is that, let's be honest, it is a bit of a faff having to boot to this disk first. You know, we've got an IDE drive here. We just want to switch on the machine and have a boot to that. Well, there is a solution. What we're going to try and do today is build ourselves a custom set of these. These are the Kickstart ROMs. This is version 3.1 that I have in this 1200. And so what we're going to try and do is build ourselves a custom set of these that also include the device driver needed for the IDE on this accelerator. We can actually do all that from within the Amiga's environment. In fact, we have to do all that from within the Amiga. But to make things a little bit handier for us, we'll move over to the PC and just do it all within WinUAE. So if we're going to do this, we are going to need some stuff. In particular, two ROM chips. These are 27C400s, 512K each, 1 megabyte total, and that's because the A1200, well, it has a bit of a trick up its sleeve. Straight out of the box, the ROMs that are in it combined are just 512K, but that machine can support 1 megabyte of ROMs. And it's just as well, really, because we're going to need that additional space to add the additional device driver. We're going to need something to program these. That's this job, but this thing itself doesn't support these. Nothing's ever simple, as they say. So we need an adapter, which goes in there like that. And just to make sure that these are blank, the only way to erase these is with UV light. So we need one of these. Those can go in there for a bit of a bath while we turn our attention to the PC and do the software bit. And in particular, this is everything that we're going to need. You need to download Remus and ROM Split. You get them from this website, and I will link this in the video's description. We're going to need the EHIDE.DEVICE driver. Again, you can download that, but from this website, TF1230.com, that's the link to it there. You need the original Kickstart, and that is version Kickstart 3.1. And I thought, since we were doing this, why not also replace the SCSI device in that Kickstart with this version, 43.45. That's the one that I normally use. So WinUAE, I'm just going to use my typical A1200 setup, but under the hard drives tab, let's add one of the hard files, Classic Workbench 3.9, we'll use that. And we'll also add that directory on the PC that has everything we need in it for the TF1230. Okay, so let's jump into Dopus. We'll select our PC directory on that side. This side here though, let's just select the RAM disk. We'll do all of this in the RAM disk just. So we need to extract ROM Split and Remus. It'll ask you to overwrite some files when you do that, but you know, just overwrite all of them. And then we can copy these other 3 files into the RAM disk as well. So into the Remus directory then, and the first thing we will do is run ROM Split. We need to load the ROM. This is the original ROM file, so the Kickstart version 3.1. There it is there. We want to select all and extract files. Now this is asking you if you want to patch one of the modules. I'm not going to do that because I just want an original 3.1 ROM just with the SCSI device modified and that additional IDE driver in there. That's all we're doing today. You can customize this quite a bit. You can change quite a few of these modules, but for today all I'm doing is just what we need. So that's all that extracted, and that is us finished with ROM split. To create our new ROM, everything else that we need is within Remus. So on this first page, the settings, you just need to leave this as it is. It's going to be a standard 512K ROM that we are creating first. We are going to create a total of a 1 megabyte ROM. But in order to do that, we need to first create a standard 512K ROM and then an extended 512K ROM. We're doing this one first. So ROM contents, you want to browse to the Remus folder into modules. That is the 3.1 ROM that we just split. That's all the modules from within it. So let's select all of those, click and drag over them, and then you can drag them all to this side. And this is our build list. Now you'll notice that there's only 96 bytes free. So if we look over here, there's the EHIDE.DEVICE that we want to add. It's about 13K. It's definitely not going to fit in there. We need to make space in here for it. And so what you can do is this workbench library, you can remove that. In fact, anyone who has the newer versions of Kickstart, be it version 3.1.4 or version 3.2, you'll know that that workbench library is not included within your ROMs. And that is purely because they ran out of room with all the updates they were applying. So that workbench library comes as part of the operating system instead. We are going to add that back in a minute into the extended ROM, but for now we've removed it from there. So there's now space to add this one. All you got to do is double click on it. There's it added down there. And I said we were also going to update this, the SCSI device. So again, just double click on that. It asks us if we want to replace the SCSI device that's already in there. Yes, we do want to do that. And that is almost our standard ROM finished. The only other thing that we need to do, because we're making a custom set of 1 megabyte ROMs, we need to browse to that Remus folder again. You want to go into BlizzKick this time, and this module here, 1 megabyte ROM, you want to drag that one into that position there. It must go directly below this exec file for it to work. Basically all that does is tell the Amiga when it's booting, it looks at its standard ROM first, and that tells the Amiga that there's an extended ROM, go check it out, and then come back and load the rest of these modules. By the way, if you were, say, wanting to build a custom 3.1 ROM to use your TF1230, say on the Amiga 500 with that ACA sidecar thing that allows you to use Amiga 1200 accelerators, you could still build the custom ROM just like this as we have here without that workbench library module within it. You don't need that 1 meg module either. You could just compile it like this, and then you would have to add that workbench library into your libs folder on your workbench drive. But we are building a 1 megabyte ROM, so we'll stick that in there. And all you need to do is right click, project, and compile. it asks us where we want to save it. We can just save it into the Remus folder, and we'll call it kick 3.1.1230 standard. ROM built. Okay, that's it done. We can now create a new one, and it's going to be the extended ROM. You can see it sets this up for us, changes that to extended, and then under ROM contents, we'll go back to that modules folder into Kickstart 3.1 there, and we'll find that workbench library that we didn't have room for last time. We're going to add that into the extended ROM, and that's all we're going to put in there. You can see though that there's plenty of space left, so if there were other modules that you wanted to add, well, this would be the place to do it. But that's all we're going to put onto the extended ROM. So again, compile. We'll call this one extended. And that is pretty much our ROMs built. Now, before we do anything else, let's test it. So jump back into Dopus again. There's our two ROM files there. And let's copy them onto our PC directory. And then hit F12, restart the emulator, go into the ROM tab, and let's add our ROMs that we just created. So there's the standard ROM. There's the extended ROM. Let's just remove those and see if the emulated Amiga starts. And yes, it does. Looking good so far. Let's try and add that hard file back. In fact, we're going to need to add that PC directory again. And let's see if it will boot into Workbench. This might look like a problem, but this is actually a good thing. SCSI.DEVICE version 4.3 already resident. That's because I added it to our new ROMs. I just comment that out, so it's not trying to load it within the startup sequence, and reset the emulator. Hopefully this time it will just boot straight into Workbench. And it does. So definitely seems as if our new custom ROMs are working. The last thing that we need to do then is take that standard and that extended ROM files and combine them into a 1 megabyte ROM for the A1200. So back into Dopus, because I was doing all that from the RAM disk and we've just now lost Remus. If we go back into Remus then, what we need to do this time is right click, go up to ARAX and make 1 megabyte ROM. Libraries are needed. So there's actually two ARAX libraries that you need, RxASL and RMH. I'll link both of those in the video's description. You can just download them from AmiNet. But once you have those installed, back into Remus, make 1 megabyte ROM. We're making these for the A1200. First one we have to select is the standard ROM. Then we want to select the extended ROM. Select the output file. We'll just call it kick 3.1.1230. And because we are making these for use in the real machine, yes, we do want to byte swap it. So that has created us high and low ROM images. They're bin files. Into Dopus one last time. Let's copy our 2 bin files out of the emulated Amiga back to our PC directory. That's just finished with WinUAE. And it is those 2 files that we need to write onto our 2 ROM chips. Okay, those ROMs are bound to be blank by now. In fact, they've been in there so long they've probably got a tan. You're only really meant to leave them in for about 5 to 10 minutes. They have been in a bit longer than that, but they should be okay. So the chip goes into this adapter board here, that way around. So, you know, the back of the chip is up against this end, but the notch in it is down that way. I really should get one of those type of sockets, one of those zip sockets for this adapter. They came with those sockets on it, but they are a bit of a pain in the backside. In fact, one of the pins on it has broke already. I had to replace it. But anyway, let's hook this up to the computer and try and program that chip. So most of this is preset as we need. There's the chip selected there. In fact, let's just double check that. Yeah, AM27C400. It's an AMD chip. That's it there, a DIP40 package. The only thing we need to change really is the pulse delay. We turn that down to 50. Turn off the check ID and turn off the pin detect. I like to turn off that, skip the 0xFF. We can read the chip out. Certainly looks blank. We can check it. It is blank. So let's load our bin file. We'll do the low one first. And let's program. Okay, that is the low ROM done. I'll do the same with the high ROM and then we'll try it in the real machine. Both the ROMs have wrote successfully. Let's just put them in here and test them on the real thing. Yes, they work okay on WinUAE, but just because they work in the emulator does not mean that they're going to work in the real machine. So we'll get these ROMs out. They have not been out of there in a long time. Those sockets have one hell of a grip. Come on, don't break anything. My proper chip lifter tool has got lost, unfortunately, during the whole move, the whole change of the man cave. But that's them out anyway, so let's put the new ROMs in. Starting with the low ROM, and Commodore in their infinite wisdom put the low ROM in the top socket. And you'll also notice that these sockets are bigger than the ROMs. It is absolutely critical that you get the orientation correct here. There is an arrow on the silk screen on the motherboard. The ROMs, the bottom of the ROM has to go against that end of the socket with the notch up this end, and you miss out that first row of pins there on the socket. So the low ROM goes in there and the high ROM goes below it. Yeah, I don't know. Commodore engineering. What I want to do first is remove any of the drives, and let's just see if the Amiga will post to its kickstart screen. Yes, that button is still broken. Oh yes, yes, it's working. It's working so far. Let's reattach our SD card here to the IDE on the TF1230. That will be the big test. Will it boot? Here we go. It's accessing. Yeah. Brilliant. It works. No more mucking about with discs. So that SD card just has a very basic version of 3.1 on it that I just use for testing. My actual plan here, long term, is to continue using the motherboard's IDE for my mechanical hard drive. That's an 80 gig drive. There's just nowhere over this side of the case to put this. And most everything I use is on this. You know, it's got Workbench 3.9 on it, all the WHD load games, and then it's just a files partition with, you know, various bits and pieces on it. What I want to do long term is to put a CF card in this end of the case. Maybe have it accessible either through the trapdoor or through that little expansion door on the back, and use that connected to the TF1230 for faster things, you know, things that need a faster hard drive, such as running videos through that AGA Blaster program. So let me reattach this to the IDE over here and just make sure that everything still works. Well, it is much later and I've had a problem. With that drive in there with OS 3.9 on it, the system won't boot. It certainly starts. You can see it start to access the hard drive, but it only gets so far and then it will throw a guru. That's what happens. It starts to boot, the hard drive light gets stuck on. It seems to sit like that for a while. It then almost seems as if it resets. And there's our software failure. And no matter what I do, this does not work. Now, if I take the drive and put it over here, you can see that Workbench loads fine. So I don't think it's the drive or my installation of 3.9. If I remove that and grab our basic installation of 3.1 and put that on to the motherboard's IDE, as you can see, it works fine. The hard drive light just gets stuck on whenever you're using one of those SD card adapters. So ignore that, that's nothing to do with it. But with that in there on the motherboard, that works fine. It's only when this is connected to the motherboard, it fails to boot. So, dare I say, is there a bug in that EHIDE.DEVICE driver that doesn't like OS 3.9? Or perhaps there's something wrong with my installation of 3.9. Maybe I need to alter something in the startup sequence. What I'll do is I will attach a copy of my startup sequence to the description of this video. And if anyone feels like having a look at it and maybe telling me if there's something in there that is causing that problem, well, please let me know so I can fix it. Well, there we are. We have successfully created our 1 megabyte ROMs. There still is quite a bit of space left in there, so if anyone has any suggestions of what else I could add, please let me know in the comments below. I did read some articles about creating a 3.9 ROM, so considering I'm running OS 3.9, maybe it would be worth looking at that. Equally, if anyone knows why this drive will not work over here, well, please let me know, because that would be my ideal setup. But for now, and for the purpose of this video, the ROMs are built, they're working. That's really all I wanted to achieve today, so I'm happy enough. Not quite finished with this card yet though. I do want to do a bit more work to it next time. In fact, we're going to make it do a bit more work. We're going to try and overclock it a bit. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you do not miss the next video. As for this video, if you enjoyed it, well, a big thumbs up would be appreciated. But until next time, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you then.